Hey YouTube, it's Eric. This video is going to be pretty quick. Oh, the sun's coming right into my room. Yeah, I'm just going to be covering, I mentioned this guy's name in the live stream I did with George, but I'm just going to show you, if you understand how the Vatican aids and abets mass murdering psychopathic priests, like for example, like they just did this in the Rwandan genocide. Many of the Catholic, and this wasn't just Catholic, many of there were Anglican priests and Protestant priests involved as well. But primarily the Catholic, the priesthood was aided and abetted by like the government of France. Like I'm gonna show you that one of the main Catholic priests involved in the Rwandan genocide is currently hiding out in Jesuit trained Emmanuel Macron's government of France. And actually, I'm pretty sure this. Let me get this guy's name here. It's just it's a mouthful. Where was it here? Yeah, this Catholic priest's name is Father Wenceslas Munyeshika. He was notorious during the 1994 genocide, and he was seen wearing a gun on his hip, just like Catholic priests in the Ustashi massacres were seen wearing guns on their hips. But yeah, his name is Father Wenceslas Munyeshika. I just wanted to mention that to you guys. He's currently, I'm pretty sure this mass murdering priest in the Rwandan genocide is practicing as like a diocesan bishop in France, which is like nice. Yeah, I'm going to show you here just some documentation on Dragutin Kamber. This guy was a sworn Jesuit priest and a mass murdering psychopath in the Jesuit led. Ante Pavlich, interestingly, was educated by Jesuits. Archbishop Stepniak was educated by Jesuits, the archbishop who oversaw the butchering in Croatia during the Ustashi genocide of the Serbs. But this is a quote from Abra Manhattan's book here, Terror Over Yugoslavia, and he's talking about some Catholic priests who, like the Rwandan genocide, many Catholic priests took part in the butchering and the killing, and like the Rwandan genocide, like the Ustashi genocide, like was just so like bestial and like savage, like many people were being killed, like being maimed by machetes in both the Ustashi and the Rwandan genocide. But you see, Avro is going to mention some murdering priests here. Instances of such priestly murderers are many. Suffice it just to mention a few. For example, this is what I'm going to highlight in this video. Father Dr. Dragutin Kamber, a sworn Ustashi but also a Jesuit priest. Father Dragutin ordered the killing of about 300 Orthodox Serbs in Doje and the court-martial of 250 others, most of whom were shot. Or we got Father Dr. Branimir Zupanic, who had more than 400 men, women, and children killed in one village alone. Rogeli, who is a personal friend of Ante, he had Rogeli, or let me see here. Rogeli, who was a personal friend of Pavlich during one of his sermons in the he and Father Strechko Peric of the Gorsa Monastery advocated mass murders with the following words, quote, "Kill all Serbs. First of all, kill my sister who is married to a Serb, and then all Serbs. When you finish this work, come here to the church, and I will confess you and free you from sin." Well, actually, no, that's right in line. Like, St. Thomas Aquinas, like the angel of Catholic morality, taught it was okay to murder and butcher heretics. So that's right in line with like the psychopathic cults that Catholicism is. But here's some more on Edmund Paris. I put all of these in the description, and I recently scanned this rare book into a PDF form. But this is Edmund Paris, and he's talking here about the cruelty of Viktor Gutic. And in the documentary I put up on my channel called Jasenovac, the most deadly concentration camp of all times, Viktor Gutic said that about the Serbs, that he wished he could kill more of them in the camps. He said, "I wish we could bring more of you here to kill you." But this is just Edmund Paris goes into the Jesuit Dragutin a bit here. So the incredible cruelty of Viktor Gutic, governor of Western Bosnia, must again be mentioned, for it was he who, in committing other atrocities, martyred the Serbian Orthodox bishop Platon. His fury also descended upon the churches. He had the Serbian Orthodox cathedral at Banja Luka destroyed and used Jewish and Serbian prisoners to do the work. Then, in turn, came the churches in the neighborhood of Prinjavor and many others, much to the satisfaction of his collaborator, that being Viktor Gutic's collaborator, who? The Jesuit priest, Dragutin Charles Kamber, now in the United States. I'm going to show you an FBI file that actually confirms that Dragutin Kamber is in the United States. This book was written in 1962, and the FBI file right here is from 1968, and it claims Dragutin Kamber is in the United States. But I'm going to get to that. You see here, Dragutin Kamber is now in the United States, a sworn Ustashi and chief of police at Dojob, okay, I can't pronounce that. Doboj. Okay, I apologize for Bosnians watching. Just I don't know, tough, like I don't know, just the letters. I don't know how you would pronounce that. Sorry, but he's the chief of police in central Bosnia, who alone was responsible for various noted crimes, such as the quote liquidation of the Serbian clergy of that region and 300 Orthodox Serbs of that city, with another 250 court-martialed in his district on his orders. Also, there was confiscation of Jewish property. Published in the newspaper Novi List on August 16th, 1941, Dr. Kamber said of the Nazis who were in Doboj, quote, "We Ustashi love you," saying this about the Nazis. "We love you sincerely as friends. We respect you highly." And actually, Adolf Hitler proudly said that he was a Roman Catholic every single year in the German Who's Who, and the Vatican never dared once to excommunicate Hitler. But we continue. "We Ustashi love you, Nazis, sincerely as friends. We respect you." And this is coming from a Jesuit. You highly, and all of us, we respect you highly, and all of us are sorry, deeply sorry that you must part. We love you. We love you because you carry in your hands the most powerful sword that has ever been forged in the history of mankind. Well, you can look at in the memoirs of Kaiser Wilhelm II, the Kaiser of Germany in the First World War. He says that Pope Benedict XV told him, the Kaiser, that Germany was to become the sword of the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is a mass murdering psychopathic cult. History. Look at the history of the Inquisitions. But continuing, "You are brothers and manly knights by your behavior and by your deeds. The paradise to which the Germans are going needs no better propagandist than the soldiers of Germany. This German army. We respect you because you are fighting to give political and social justice to all of Europe." Actually, it was the devout Catholic. It was interesting how Hitler's vice chancellor was a papal chamberlain and a Knight of Malta, Franz von Papen. But it was Franz von Papen who declared, like in the official Nazi newspaper, Der Voiceker, that Nazi Germany was the first country to put into practice the principles of Roman Catholicism. Like in your face, like just telling you that like Nazi Germany is Roman Catholic. But continue here. "With the blood and the bones of the precious German soldiers, the flower of Germany, you are building the foundations of a happy world for future generations." That's according to the mass murdering Jesuit priest Ustashi Dragutin Charles Kamber, who is in the United States, probably lived out the rest of his life in the United States. So continue here, Edmund Paris says, in the Sarajevo newspaper called Osvit, Kamber on December 18th, 1942 wrote, quote, "Why do I want the Germans and their allies, Italy, Hungary, and Bulgaria, to win? Because without the Germans, our nation would die, and we would have no independent state of Croatia. From the international point of view, the Germans and the Ustashi have the same enemies," end quote. You see here, Father Charles Dragutin Kamber is now in the USA. He is writing in many Croatian newspapers all over the world, especially in the Danica newspaper in Chicago, Catholic fascist Ustashi organ. He is teaching the Ustashi in exile how to fight for the independence of the state of Croatia by new methods. He has written a booklet on how to behave in the world, even though still in the Ustashi. Once Ustashi, a Ustashi till death was the Ustashi slogan. The booklet has the title, quote, "Problems and Methods to be Used in the Fight for Free Croatia." Henceforth, there will only be too often an occasion to perceive the great preponderance of action taken by the Catholic ecclesiastics in unleashing every kind of violence. Okay, and here's the FBI document here. You see, this is literally this. I recommend you guys go to the Krunislav Draganovich files, the declassified Freedom of Information Act files. Krunislav Draganovich also was the main Ustashi who was smuggling Ustashi and Nazi war criminals out of Europe. All that information is in like the 100 declassified files on the CIA reading room. And there's a good book that I have on my archive page called Blowback by Christopher Simpson. And there's a whole chapter in that book on the Vatican rat lines to smuggle out Nazis. And there's detailed reporting on Krunoslav Draganovich's role. You see here on January 11th, this is according to the FBI, January 24th, 1968. On January 11th, 1968, John Zikovich at 2240 South Algoma Street, San Pedro, California, furnished a special agent of the FBI with the following information. Zikovich stated that he is the president of the San Pedro branch of the United American Croatians, which branch is called the, quote, Dalmatia. Secretary is Sveto Vladic. These are all mass murdering Ustashi psychopaths. He stated that this branch is merely, quote, a paper organization that does not hold regular meetings and no formal offices. He stated there is no treasurer because no dues are collected and consequently there is no treasury. He advised that the individuals that are members of the Dalmatia are also members of the American Croatian Club of San Pedro. When meetings are to be held, they utilize the address and office of the American Croatian Club. You can see the Jesuit Dragutin Kamber is mentioned in these FBI files. Zikovich stated that the national office is located in New York City and the national president is Miro Gal. He advised that the official publication of the United American Croatians is called Veshnik, which is published every 3 months. Vikovich attended the 8th Croatian Congress of Ustashi terrorists meeting in the United States, which was held in Cleveland, Ohio on September 2nd and 3rd, 1967, as a representative of the Committee for Croatian Societies, which represents all of the Croatian groups in California. Zikovich stated that the American Croatian Club engages in, quote, anti-communist activities and has often been unjustly labeled as fascist because of their activities. Yeah, like bashing people's heads in with hammers, ripping babies out of the wombs of women. Yeah, like we're unfairly calling you a fascist. Yeah. Catholic apologists are just pathetic. But continuing. As a result of this, the American Croatian Club has had difficulty in attracting other Croatians to join. He stated that the American United Croatians do not have the stigma attached to it and is regarded as a respectable organization. That's funny. He says the purpose of the United American Croatians is to bring the attention of the president and other prominent government leaders, as well as individuals of prominence in the U.S. government, issues which arise in which Croatians have a vital interest. Yeah, what that really means is, putting pressure on the puppet. At this time, the president of the United States was Jesuit-educated Lyndon Johnson, of all people. Yeah, so putting pressure on the government to do the bidding of the Catholic Ustashis. Oh, give me a second. Yeah, I'm getting a call here, so I'm going to wrap this up. And there's a letter from Dean Rusk here, which is interesting. He's talking about Krunoslav Draganovich, because there was a meeting to liberate Krunoslav Draganovich. What is this here? Oh, this is give me a second. Oh, I have 2 files downloaded. Give me a second here. Oh. Okay, here it is. This is the source I was talking about. I'll link this also, but this was the document here. So that's some background on this meeting. And you see there's a meeting for the Liberation Committee for the Rescue of Professor Draganovich, September 17th, 18th in Cleveland, Ohio. And look who's in attendance. Where was it here? Reverend Dr. Dragutin Kamber of Toronto, Canada. Right there. So I just want, the Vatican does this. They aid and abet murderous priests, and history repeats itself. But yeah, I got to get going. But peace and love, YouTube. Namnas. Hey YouTube, it's Eric. I'm back from work. There's a little bit more information I want to get into my last video covering the Jesuit priest Dragutin Kamber, who was a sworn Ustashi who became the chief of police in Dobjoy, Bosnia. I'm getting better at pronouncing that name. Dobjoy, Bosnia. That's where Dragutin Kamber was stationed as the chief of police. And I'm just going to show you some more information I found on the guy. I found he became a parish priest in even Gary, Indiana. He became a priest down in Argentina when Pavlich and the Ustashis fled with Krunoslav Draganovich. I'm going to read to you the full document on the committee to liberate Krunoslav Draganovic when he was supposedly kidnapped by the Yugoslav government. But I'm just going to show you here quickly how the Dragutin Kamber falls into, like, you have to realize, like, as a Jesuit, he is deceptive by nature. I'm going to show you a source that before the Ustashi bloodbaths were kicked off, Dragutin Kamber, the Jesuit, was making all sorts of false claims about Serbian atrocities against the Croatians to create emotional hatred in the minds of his duped Ustashi robotic followers, who then went out to massacre the Serbs afterwards. But you see here, Jesuitism. What is it defined as? The Jesuit is a noun. Jesuitism is a noun. The principles and practices of the Jesuits. And you see here, what's number one? Cunning, deceit, hypocrisy, prevarication, deceptive practices to effect a purpose. So that's what a Jesuit is defined as. A Jesuit is literally defined as being deceptive. But you see here, I'm going to show you a source that shows Dragutin Kamber being deceptive right here. This was called War and Revolution in Yugoslavia, 1941-1945 by Jozo Tomasevic. You see here on, let me see what page this is here. This is on the Google Books preview. This is on page 403. It says here, by far the most absurd figures on the number of Croats supposedly killed by the Serbs in interwar Yugoslavia were given by the Reverend Dragutin Kamber, a Catholic parish priest and Ustashi county head in Doboj, Bosnia, and towards the end of the war, deputy military vicar of the Croatian and armed forces. That doesn't mention that Dragutin was a Jesuit priest, but he mentions he was a Catholic priest and a Ustashi county head. You see here at the end of the war, he was the war deputy military vicar of the Croatian armed forces. So just like Cardinal Spellman was the military vicar of the American forces, the Jesuit priest Dragutin Kamber was the deputy military vicar of the Croatian armed forces. In a letter to Eugene Cardinal Tisserant, let me see here. Okay, so it's saying here that Dragutin was exaggerating the Serbian atrocities perpetrated on the Croats to Eugene Cardinal Tisserant. Okay, as a political exile from Croatia, temporarily in Rome, Kamber was taken to an audience with the cardinal by a friend, where Tisserant asked him how the Croats could have killed 300,000 Serbs during the war. Kamber was taken back at the directness of the question and could not immediately answer. That's interesting. Okay, and actually, if you, I linked the documentary in the description, Jesuit, the deadliest concentration camp of all times. You see that Cardinal Tisserant was actually one of the few cardinals in the Catholic Church that was he was literally the only Catholic cardinal of prominence who was vocally against the Ustashi massacres. You see here, Kamber was taken back at the directness of the question and could not immediately answer when Tisserant pressed him to why the Catholic Church, why did the Croats, the prominently Catholic Ustashi regime, butcher? It was actually 700,000. Probably in combination with the Serbs, the Jews, the Bosnians, it probably goes up to 700,000. But this author is claiming it was 300,000 Serbs, and just in particular. But I thought that was interesting. And I'm going to show you here, Dragutin Kamber was on the committee to liberate Krunoslav Draganovic. And Krunoslav Draganovic here was a Jesuit-educated, high-level Ustashi. And look at this right here. He literally wrote his thesis in the German language titled "Mass Conversions of Catholics to Orthodoxy in the Croatian-Speaking Area during Turkish Rule," which I thought was interesting. That was his thesis in 1935. In 1935, he returned to Bosnia, became a secretary to Archbishop Ivan Saric. But look at this here. So during the Jesuit concentration camp, and I recommend you watch the documentary. I've linked the Joggler 66 channel put out that documentary, and he cut out the last 15 minutes that was a rerun. So I linked that in the description. I recommend you watch that. But you see, Krunoslav Draganovic was the Jesuit concentration camp military chaplain for some time until in both Krunislav Draganovich and Aloysius Stepniak and Ante Pavlich were all educated by the Jesuits. Stepniak and Draganovich were educated at the Gregorian University. But you see here, he was literally the Jasenovic concentration camp military chaplain. I'm going to show you the Jesuit priest Dragutin Kamber was on the, he was a member of the committee to liberate Krunislav Draganovich. I linked this in the description. Even the Wikipedia page has a lot of information on Draganovich. I also recommend you go through the CIA's declassified files on Draganovich. Where was that here? Yeah, and it says here he studied at the Jesuit Gregorian University in Rome. It's right there. Yeah. I thought it was interesting. His thesis was the conversion of Catholics to Orthodoxy, and just like the Ustashi massacres was literally like a direct 180. That's just, I mean, that's an interesting thesis, and that was during the Turkish rule. We can continue here. So more documents on Dragutin Kamber. I'll go to the FBI file here. And then I found that there was more on Dragutin Kamber that Edmund Paris covered in the book, Genocide in Satellite Croatia, that I didn't cover in the first video. We see here, and in these, there's like 100 of these files that was released to the Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act. In these files, like the CIA, like the State Department, they admit in these files that Draganovich like was directly responsible for like the murders and the killings in Ustashi, Croatia, and how Draganovich like aided and abetted Nazis and Catholic Ustashi criminals out of Europe, primarily shipping them to South America, like Argentina, Brazil, primarily. But that's all in these batch of CIA files. I recommend you check them out. This is from the FBI here, and you see here, confidential source who has furnished reliable information on the past. On March 25th, 1968, advised he learned that on February 17th and 18th in Cleveland, Ohio, members of the, quote, Committee for the Rescue of Professor Draganovich, who is the military chaplain at the Jasenovic concentration camp, held a conference. Members of the various Croatian organizations, priests, and sympathizers attended and discussed what has happened so far and what will be undertaken in the future regarding the, quote, kidnapping of Professor Krunislav Draganovich, a Croatian Catholic priest, by the Yugoslav government. And like I just have to look into more of the supposed kidnapping. I doubt that completely, because literally it was like 1971, Marshal Tito, a born Roman Catholic, by the way, who was the president of Yugoslavia, went to see Pope Paul VI at the Vatican. You know, Pope Paul VI was calling. He was the Pope when the Pro Dio program of, quote, they were like the indoctrination. What was the header? It was the Pro Dio program for indoctrinating Latin American priests in the concept of U.S. free price enterprise economics. That was under Pope Paul VI, which is funny because Pope Paul VI was supposedly, you know, the Pope of the people, right? He wrote that what was it, Popularo Progressum. Like a lot of people, like a lot of, you know, the Latin Mass, like hardline Catholics, or or the conservative Catholics in the church were literally calling Pope Paul a Marxist while he was creating this program at via Morlian at Pro Dio and the Inter-American Development Bank to indoctrinate Catholic priests in capitalist, like U.S. crony capitalist economics. That's pretty funny. Just, I guess, Catholic hypocrisy. Let me see here. So at the conference in the hall of the Croatian Committee for the Emigration in Cleveland, Ohio. And I covered this at the end of the last video, but you see here the Reverend Dr. Dragutin Kamber of Toronto, Canada is here. And actually they met at the Hotel Sheraton in Cleveland. You see here, and another priest that I found a picture of this Ustashi priest here, Reverend Dr. Tomislav Firis. And I'm going to show you Dr. Tomislav Firis was trying to get the Knights of Columbus to help liberate Krunislav Draganovich. Where was that? Here. Yeah, here's a photo here I found. Reverend Tomislav Firis. So this guy was an associate of the Jesuit Dragutin Kamber. And you remember in the first, if you're just watching this video, I did a video on, my last video I did was on Kamber, and I read some quotes where he was literally saying how he loves the Nazi Party and how, like with the Nazis and the Ustashis are going to create like a new Europe fighting for social justice. That's like paraphrasing it, but yeah. Here's a photo of Reverend Thomas Laveries. Okay. You see, so he attended this meeting with Krunislav or Reverend Dragutin Kamber. Okay, and again, this was for the Committee for the Rescue of Professor Draganovich. And Dragutin Kamber is mentioned a little bit more in here. You see, the conference was opened by Rudolf Erich. That's how you pronounce that, probably in Croatian. With Rudolf Erich, that's probably Erich. Croatian. Rudolf Erich, described by a source as an extremist Croatian who gave the reasons for holding the conference. The conference elected as president Dr. Vilko Mencil, and for security engineer Vinko Kunzina of New York, New York. The delegates from the Croatian organizations reported to what has been done in their towns concerning the Draganovich incident. Special attention was given to discussion concerning publicizing the incident to the press and the public. The president of the Association of Croatian Priests in the United States and Canada, I show you a picture there, Monsignor Dr. Tomislav Firis, explained that this association would give full moral support and cooperation. And look, the Jesuit priest Dr. Dragutin Kamber, the mass murdering Ustashi who ordered the deaths of thousands of Orthodox in the massacres, the editor of the association's magazine, Dr. Dragutin Kamber, announced very soon what will be undertaken in connection with this. And this is what I thought was really interesting here. What you see here, engineer Victor Kuzna explained that the Croatian Academy of America of New York is actively participating in all actions in connection with Professor Draganovich. Monsignor Dr. Tomislav Firis promised to have, quote, Catholic service and the, quote, Knights of Columbus become engaged in the assistance of the Croatian priest Draganovich. Well, that's very fitting. As the Knights of Columbus actually funded, I think, the Aloysius Stepniak High School, and I think that's in the state of New York. You see, and look at this. Bozidar Abinach reported about the discussion he had with U.S. Senator Lausch of Ohio concerning the Draganovich incident. Okay, I got to look up. This is interesting here. I got to see. So these Croatian fascist terrorist network was infiltrating the United States Congress. It shouldn't be too surprising considering how owned the United States is by the Vatican. Yeah, you look at here. Yeah, Francis LaRouche went to St. Francis grade school, which is doubtlessly Catholic. So yeah, this guy was probably a Catholic in the Congress that they were able to slip information to. That's interesting. Yeah, he became the state's first Catholic governor as governor of Ohio. That's interesting. Oh, look at this. He was named, LaRouche was a Knight of Malta. Look at that. He was made a Knight of, okay, I got to bookmark this guy's page. I'll link this in the description. Frank Lausch was named a Knight of St. John of Malta by Pope John Paul II, the highest civilian honor that can be bestowed by the Catholic Church. You look at that. Yeah, so this Frank Lausch, and this is according to an FBI file in 1968 that Bozidar Abinach, representing the Committee to Liberate Krunislav Draganovich, had conversations with the Knight of Malta, U.S. Senator Lausch of Ohio. You see here, furthermore, Bozidar Abinach has suggested that they request a tax exemption for every gift that is contributed to the fund for the defense of Professor Draganovich. I bet they got that tax exemption. I'm just gonna. Oh, that's funny, man. Okay. Yeah. So the delegate from Chicago, Tomislav Mesic, suggested that the name "the Committee for the Rescue of Professor Draganovich" be changed to the Croatian Committee for the Protection of Human Rights. And actually, yeah, you can see here, for this new committee, the Jesuit priest Dragutin Kamber, you see here, is the chief of documents for this new organization. But you see at this conference, like, this is crazy. Like, the conference held meetings like all over the U.S., Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Pedro, California, Chicago, Cleveland, and Toronto, Canada. Soon, and this is according to the FBI, soon there will be committees in Akron, Ohio, St. Louis, Missouri, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and New York City. And it says here the main committee for the CCPHR, that, and again, that is the, quote, the Croatian Committee for the Protection of Human Rights, is located in Cleveland, Ohio, and committees in the other cities of the U.S. and Canada will be formed by those delegates who are in Cleveland. So they got a tax-exempt foundation going. They have connections to the U.S. Congress through a Knight of Malta, Frank Lausch, who was the first Roman Catholic governor of Ohio, and he was the chair of the National Governors Association as well. You see how connected these organizations are. And here you see the name Dragutin Kamber pop up again here, okay, as the chief of documents. See, I think Kamber comes up one more time. And so here, at the pre-conference, which was held February 17th in the hall of the Croatian Committee for Immigration in Cleveland, Ohio, at the main conference. Oh no, that's at the top. Let me see here. Yeah, that I've already read that. Okay, that was all the Kamber references in this document. Yeah, someone said Kamber was the chief of documents as well as in this organization. He was a magazine editor also. He was the editor of like the newsletter that this Liberation of Draganovich group put out. And he's also, from the first video, Edmund Paris's book, the Dragutin Kamber is also the editor at this Ustashi magazine here called Danica. And you see right there. I'm just going to read this is back to Edmund Paris's book, Genocide in Satellite Croatia, published in 1962. Dragutin Kamber is mentioned a little bit more in this book here. You see here the Jesuit Dragutin Kamber, chief of police in Bosnia and one of the pillars of the regime, in writing to Pavelic September 1941, came to this unhappy conclusion. And remember earlier in the video I quoted that like Dragutin Kamber was he was speechless when Tisserant like directly brought it to his attention, like why did Croatians massacre hundreds of thousands of Serbs? Like didn't have an answer to it, and he admits to them massacring Serbs in this quote here. But he comes to, you'll see Dragutin Kamber is a little sad that like the Ustashi massacres, or he's sad that the Nazi, it's ultimately like the Ustashi regime was defeated because the Nazis were defeated. But Draganov, you see that in this quote, he was very, let me see here. Yeah, 23. I just want to see this is coming from an author here, Victor Novak. But this is Draganovich writing to Ante Pavelic, the Führer of Ustashi, Croatia. Quote, "We were in too much of a hurry in deporting their priests in order to wipe out their religion. We have confiscated their vast areas and massacred them in large numbers. Whereas with the others, we simply told them that they could not remain here as Serbs and Orthodox." So he's probably thinking that if we didn't, massacre them so fast, maybe like the international community wouldn't have become, alarmed to what's going on here. But back to Edmund Paris, and the good Jesuits seemed sad to think that all the extreme measures which he had taken had borne so little fruit. Continuing here, and he's mentioning Archbishop Šerić, and with Krunoslav Draganovich, he was an assistant to this Archbishop Šerić. But Archbishop Šerić, instead of praying to the Lord for pardon, only continued committing his innumerable crimes. His, quote, Martyrium Croatiae, which was sent from Madrid, gave ample proof that he had not repented. And that's so Martyrium Croatia. I think with the extra E, that's I think you just pronounced that Croatia. I messed up there. But so this is Archbishop Šerić. He sent from Madrid, gave ample proof that he had not repented. His paper was the first to publish the Nazi harangues and the anti-Christian apostrophes to Hitler's tanks in canon. None of the Ustashi who wore uniforms and are today in clerical robes, such as Dragutin Kamber, Ivo Armor Cannon, Dragutin Kulakola, Dr. Otto Nezovic, Gracian Brno Rapsudic, Valo Rasic, T. Misic, Ante Salija, Branimir Jelic, Dr. Buk, Professor Lukas, Krunoslav Draganovich, Nikola Tojic, Dr. Sajeric, Willem Sajela, and others have repented. Instead of repenting, they have slipped into the Bolivian, where they are still continuing their racial ideology in the free world under the protection of complete freedom, just as they have done before in the independent state of Croatia under the protection of Hitler and Mussolini. Now that their racist masters have been forever silenced, a large number of Ustashis with their priests and monks are trying to persuade the free world that the Ustashi were not inspired by racism, but a democracy. I find it interesting here. Edmund Paris says, continuing, at the time when the Germans are showing the German youth traces of the frightful crimes that took place in Hitler's concentration camps, a Croatian high priest is uttering threats of future extermination of the Serbs. The threats of this Croatian prelate are expressed in a language which even Al Capone would hardly dare to use. And the source he gives for that is the Right Reverend Ivan Stepanovich, whose attacks against the Serbs were published and applauded in the newspaper Hrvatski Glas, the Croatian voice, in Winnipeg, Canada. Interestingly, January 29th, 1952. As we continue here, Edmund Paris keeps writing, the Jesuit Dr. Dragutin Kamber, with whom we are now well acquainted, protested against the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which reorganized the Yugoslavia formed in 1918. And in a letter to his, quote, American friends, wrote, quote, this is in a letter to his, quote, American friends from the Jesuit Dragutin Kamber, quote, dear American friends, may you be sure that we prefer harmony and peace in the world, and we disdain greatly to be any kind of troublemakers. But we must continue the fight against the killers and destroyers of our people, and therefore we cannot drop our claims for a Croatian state on the beautiful eastern coast of the Adriatic Sea, at the doorstep of the Balkans near the Danube River. It should not be forgotten so fast that the mistakes committed in dealing with that area in the first half of our century have had catastrophic consequences for the whole world, end quote. And that's from Dr. Dragutin Kamber and To Our American Friends, Why a Croatian Independent State, published in the Croatian Nation, Chicago, 1955, page 418. So reading between the lines, it would appear that they were all as gentle as lambs. Reverend Dr. Kamber included, for it was he who in times gone by sowed death and terror throughout Bosnia under Pavlich as Ustashi, representing the prefect of the police at Dobjoy and Ustashi colonel. Furthermore, he threatened that the programs of 1941 to 1945 might be repeated if the USA did not uphold the, quote, just cause of these persecutors. Considering American ethics and laws, this is indeed strange. This is indeed a strange turn of affairs. It should be remembered that in 1941, Dr. Dragutin Charles Kamber never wrote to his, quote, American friends, but to the Hitlerian hordes. And there's a bit more here in the book. Or was that all? Let me see. Yeah, that was what was mentioned in so that was the mentions of Dragutin Kamber and genocide in satellite Croatia. There's one more interesting. This was from a Croatian source. I translated this from Croatian to English. This was like a biography here, and it just kind of shows Dragutin. There's a section where it shows like his movements, which I thought was just fascinating. Yeah, so it was this part here. So in May, he had May 1945. He fled to Austria, then to Rome, then to Spain. He was Dragutin was a chaplain and a teacher in Buenos Aires, Argentina. That's where Ante Pavlich fled to Argentina. Klaus Barbie also went to Argentina. It was actually the Jesuit trained Krunoslav Draganovic that smuggled Klaus Barbie out to Argentina. That's the information for that's in the book Blowback by Christopher Simpson. So the Jesuit Dragutin Kamber went to Buenos Aires, and then in the United States, he was a pastor in Gary, Indiana. And he was a visiting priest in Detroit, Michigan in 1950. Actually, I'm pretty sure Charles Coughlin was a priest. I'm pretty sure he was just a priest in Detroit after he was defrocked in like 1942. The Dragutin Kamber was a priest in Detroit, Michigan, of all places. And I'm pretty sure Coughlin just lived out his days as a parish priest. Yeah, he remained as a pastor of the Shrine of the Little Flower, Royal Oak. Yeah, so Royal Oak, Michigan is Detroit. So Doubtlessly, Dragutin Kamber, came in connection with Charles Coughlin. I thought that was interesting how he was in Detroit right and around the time, Coughlin was still alive at this time. This was only like 8 years after the Social Justice magazine went down. And then Dragutin Kamber was a pastor in Lynch near Omaha. And from 1961 to the end of his life, he lived in Toronto, Canada, which I find also very interesting. In 1962, he acted meditatively at the All Croat Congress in New York. And he is the author of the Statement of the Union of Croatian Priests in the United States and Canada of the 20th of 1966 on the protocol between the Vatican and the SFRY. I'm not sure what that organization is referring to there. But you see all these publications, like Dragutin, he put out all of these publications. He was the editor at that fascist or Ustashi Danica magazine. He was also the editor on the committee to liberate Krunislav Draganovic. Because Dragutin Kamber, through his American friends and his friends in the Vatican, was probably also to help that organization get its tax-exempt status for laundering all sorts of money, probably like heroin money. Because Klaus Barbie actually, factually was smuggling heroin and cocaine, like in South America, and Klaus Barbie was brought over by Krunislav Draganovic. Yeah, I think that was all the other information I found. Yeah, and this was the town here that Dragutin Bender was chief of police in. Let me see, pronounced Dubjoy doesn't. I think it's Dubjob or Dubob. I don't know. I gotta learn how to pronounce this properly. This is the city that Dragutin Bender was chief of police in Bosnia, which I find very fascinating. Yeah, they got the laurel wreath right there on their seal, or the fleur-de-lis. Actually, on Jasenovac concentration camp, where is that photo here? You notice something? This is so Dragutin or Krunislav Draganovic was the chaplain, and this is watch the documentary I linked in the description. This was one of the most barbarous concentration camps in human history, and like you see, this is why I point out the Roman laurel wreath. It's important to know this symbol. Because you see this symbol? This is for example, this is the symbol Mark Passio wears on his T-shirts on all of his shows that haven't changed in 5 years. He's doing the exact same script. But this is, for example, this logo. This logo is on the logo. The Roman wreath that Mark Passio promotes on his logos was the same Roman wreath used on the front of the Jasenovac concentration camp. This is the same Roman wreath on the United Nations. Anonymous uses this. Interpol uses this. Like the World Bank uses this. The CIA uses this. The FBI uses this. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I think that's all for this one, YouTube. Peace and love, and Namnas. Take care.